All right, you're watching The Worst Day. I'm your host, Poppers, where I watch podcasts so you don't have to. Let's get right into it with this
Just the
episode.
fact that we've
All
abandoned
right.
science, that now medicine
What are
is,
you talking
what
about,
we're
lady?
going
Come
to
on.
look at and how we're going to make policy is based on whoever's in charge, their particular priorities. And science and evidence be damned. We're not looking at that now. And let me just say, a lot of what we do, yes, we do have to infer. We don't have absolute evidence for everything, but we have a good amount, particularly for things like vaccines that have been around for certainly as long as we've been alive. We have a track record on those. And to sort of throw science out the window because someone has a cockamamie theory about it is pretty troubling if that's the road that we're going to be on, and we're
Michelle Obama,
seeing the
what
results
is
of that
science to
now.
you?
Well, we're seeing more and more conversations from anti-vaxxers.
Right.
We saw it during COVID. What's that about? Why are we all of a sudden, after all these generations, now pushing against vaccines that have saved lives for
Oh, come on.
decades?
Well,
Every
it matters who's in charge.
vaccine is different. Come
Sort
on,
of
you
the way
know
medical
that. Come on.
research used to work
All
was
right,
that
all right.
there are researchers and there are people at NIH and there's scientists who who actually do the work, and the work drives the policy, not necessarily the other way around. Now, granted, there is some, because there are people deciding what research gets funded and what doesn't. That's always been the case. But now we're having at the highest levels.
Oh, come on. Who are these people at the highest
we're not
level?
doing
We
that.
want names.
And you kind of go, wait a minute, but we've got 50 years of data on that. And it's as if that does not exist. And we're just going to we're going to serve the theories and, whims of whoever happens to be. And so it's not
What are
really
you trying to say, lady?
it's not coming from the
Dr.
scientific
Sharon
community. It's
Malone.
really coming from someone
Dr.
else
Sharon
who has
Malone.
a very different view
More like all alone.
of what they think is important, and they're embracing some theories and some conspiracies that really have no basis in science. And that's a problem if that's how we're going to continue to do research in this country.
And we're seeing that with this measles outbreak. So
I knew a measle once.
Well,
oh wait, that was a weasel.
Yeah, I mean, they've got now over 500 cases of measles, a disease that was considered eradicated in this country. And here's the thing, take for instance smallpox. Okay, smallpox was a terrible thing, and then everybody got vaccinated. It's been declared by the World Health Organization, it's eradicated. Now no one gets it. But if you allow the measles to come back, and more people are unvaccinated, and the thing that people really don't remember about why it's so important to get an MMR, the MMR part of it was rubella. And rubella was why pregnant women get it. And guess what? You have congenital defects in children, deafness, blindness, birth defects in pregnant women who are unvaccinated. So as bad as it is amongst the children, yes, will most of them survive? Yes, they will. But what about everybody else? What about the ones that don't? And one child dying is too many, but now you're going to infect pregnant women and unborn children. And if you really care about unborn children, that seems to me a good enough reason to vaccinate.
That sure seems targeted, Miss Malone. Come on.
Does that protect your unborn child?
If you are vaccinated, exactly. But what if we keep this trend going, and as these children who are unvaccinated now reach puberty and childbearing years, then they will be just as at risk as generations were before.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling to believe that with all that we know, with all the resources, with the wealth in this nation, that we are going to go backwards in time, that we are walking backwards with our eyes wide open, with sirens blaring, it's just, it's just unbelievable to me that in a short period of time, we're here having these kind of conversations.
We had just really, even on the women's health front, we had just started to we're like, wow, now we know about that 45 billion and we're only getting, 4 billion of it. All right, well, that was great, except as we were starting to make progress and they were saying, yes, we've got to pay attention to women's health issues. And, there was President Biden came up with a $100 million White House initiative for women's health in midlife. The Department of Defense had a $500 million grant that was supposed to go to studying women in the military because nobody was studying them. Poof, it's just all gone. It's all gone.
So Sharon, before we get to our listener question, we have some great listeners who send in great questions.
Who's this guy?
Before we get to that, given all of this non-information and misinformation and the dialing back of funding, if you could give women your biggest piece of advice that they could hear from our platform here on sort of what they should be doing, what would that piece of advice be?
The one thing I would say to women is this: no one's coming to save you. So if you think that the president or the governor or your state legislator is coming to save you, they're not. But they will if you make them. And see, this is
Oh, yeah? How will you make them? You let me know. You tell me.
The political environment is what it is. But this is it's a political issue. It's not a partisan issue because this will affect all women. It doesn't matter, what your political affiliation is. And this is where I think that as 51% of the population and probably 60% of the voting population, that we have an opportunity for this big A advocacy is for women to say, hey, look here, I'm going to talk to my state legislators and say, this is important to me, and you're either going to address this or we will vote you out. And that is really the only power that we have collectively, is to make sure that our voices are heard, and that once people realize that we're serious about this and we're not going to just sit here and take it, I think people will start to listen.
Yeah, and Craig, that piece of advice cannot just be directed to women. This is why I implore the men in the world who have women that they say they care about, daughters that they are raising, that this is their issue too. I mean, for men to sit on their hands over this issue and trade out women's health for a tax break or whatever it is a sad statement about that man's level of value of the women in their lives. And there are a lot of men who have they have big chairs at their tables. There are a lot of women who vote the way their man is going to vote. It happened in this election. So just to direct this at women, unfortunately, we've seen is not enough.
And we are already facing a doctor shortage coming up because we're getting older. We're watching this, we're the last of the baby boomers, but there's a huge push, the people that are going to need the most care, and we don't have enough doctors to meet that need. And so we've got to figure that out and figure out even more, I'd say more innovative ways to deliver care. Just like in the old days where you would get sick and you call the doctor and he would come to your house. Okay, when they stop doing that, you're never going to go back and do that again.
Right.
Well, we need a real serious innovation change in how care is delivered right now, because we don't have enough doctors to backfill. And to be a little bit more, to take it even further, when people are saying, yeah, well, we need more culturally sensitive doctors, and we do. But here's the problem. How are you going to get them if you're desperate?
Right. You know what? I've had just about enough of this. Enough of this podcast. You don't have to watch this. I'll tell you what, you don't have to watch it.